So you're saying that what you feared could happen may indeed have happened, that the manipulations from one company, Google, may have determined the outcome of the presidential election.
Well, we've been told this for nearly a year by whistleblowers from Google. We've seen it in leaked documents from Google, leaked videos from Google. There's no question that they set about after the 2016 election to make sure that President Trump, whom I do not support, by the way, to make sure that he is not reelected. And the massive amount of data we've collected is consistent with what the whistleblowers and leaks have been telling us for a long time now. So yes, the answer is yes.
The 2020 presidential election was not fair. No honest person would claim that it was fair. On many levels, the system was rigged against one candidate and in favor of another. And it was rigged in ways that were not hidden from view. We all saw it happen. The media openly colluded with the Democratic nominees. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris refused to explain what they would do if they were elected. That's never happened before in any presidential election in American history, but the media allowed them to do it.
Welcome. You're in the War Room, live from Capitol Hill, our nation's capital. It is Tuesday, the 23rd of November, the year of our Lord. Actually, 24th. I skipped a day there. 24th of November, year of our Lord, 2020. Now with over 20 million downloads on our podcast, and of course live on Real America's Voice, the streaming platform of the Trump Revolution. Also, it's now Dish Channel 219 on satellite and on Comcast Channel 113. John Frederick's radio network throughout the nation, and Newsmax TV, and of course G News and GTV. Subtitled in Mandarin and blown throughout the world. Makes us a global show. I want to welcome our audience all the way from South Africa to Australia and New Zealand. And, of course, everybody watching us in China. A lot going on today. We want to get into it. Right there with Tucker, had Dr. Epstein, I think it is Bob Epstein or Dr. Epstein, who's been a real proponent. He worked with Peter Schweitzer for a number of years to talk about everything with social media and the power of Google, etc. I'm not actually sure how he gets to the details of how they stole it, but we'll get to that later. And then,
can I get one of these screens? One of these.
You could use one.
Plexiglass
I'd be all for that.
No. Have another pinch of tobacco there, Jack. You're not.
Exactly.
You're
HCQ, Copenhagen. Ivermectin. I'm fully loaded.
A body too tough for COVID. We found the vaccine for COVID. It's chewing tobacco.
Hey, I'm no different than the body of this country. I'm too tough for COVID unless people tell me I'm not tough enough for COVID.
Wow. And we're going to have Jack Maxey. We're going to actually, in this show or maybe this afternoon, go through my favorite, the Fauci, giving an hour interview. He's so busy over NIH, he can take an hour of his day to give an interview with the Washington Post where he's mumbling it says one thing at the beginning of the interview, another thing at the end of the interview. Tony, we're moving the goalpost, Fauci. So we'll have the Fauci. We'll do the Fauci either later today or tomorrow. We're going to go right away, though, to Jack Posobiec. The President of the United States, Raheem, actually, because of establishment Republicans, all this allowed, and maybe personal attacks on the GSA woman, but there are a lot of folks around the country, I should note to the president, getting personal attacks that are standing up for him. He flipped the switch to GSA, but I don't know if he's having buyer's remorse. What did he say? He just tweeted out something, Greg?
Can I just frame this real quick, Greg?
Yeah.
And then let me tell you a story. A couple of weeks ago, just before the election, I turned to some friends of mine in the administration. I said, "Hey, who's on top of the general services stuff?" Like, what are you talking about, general services stuff? I was like, the guys who deal in the transition and who deal in the inauguration. Who's making sure that's squared away? Who's making sure they don't jump the gun? And I just got shrugged at, right? They just didn't know what I was talking about. And here's the thing. The last couple of days I've seen just mountains and mountains of attacks, threats, pressure leveled at the lady in charge of the GSA, Emily Murphy. Now, she wrote in her letter yesterday when she writes to Joe Biden and says, "Hey, I'm the administrator of the GSA. I have the ability under the Transition Act of 1963 to assist in the event of a presidential transition." She says, "I was never directly or indirectly pressured by any executive branch official, including those who work at the White House or GSA, with regard to the substance or timing of my decision. To be clear, I did not receive any direction to delay my determination." She then goes on, "I did, however, receive threats online, by phone, and by mail directed at my safety, my family, my staff, and even my pets in an effort to coerce me into making this determination prematurely.
Prematurely. See, that's the,
Prematurely.
and then what did the president say today? He tweeted out what?
Yep, so 20 minutes ago, the president tweeted, "Remember, the GSA has been terrific, and Emily Murphy has done a great job, but the GSA does not determine who the next president of the United States will be."
Exactly. We're fighting on here. I want to bring on now Jack Posobiec from One America News. Jack, before we get into the details of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, for our audience, give your sense of the battlefield here. Where is it? Because we have a lot of news to break today about directions this thing is going. What is your sense of where we stand overall with this, and particularly given the GSA? And I know a lot of the Trump supporters were in the mumble tank last night, and we're here to tell you, put it aside. The game is on, and the fight is on like never before. We're going to go into details, but Jack, where do you put it? Give your unique perspective of where we are overall.
Well, Steve, you saw what Emily Murphy was responding to. This is something that we covered at antifamovie.com, Raheem, myself, and other experts. The lawlessness, anarcho-tyranny of these forces that will be unleashed on behalf of the left. They don't necessarily support the Democrats, but they certainly do not support the Republicans either, and they will do anything. They will stop at anything. They will go after your pets, they'll go after your family, they go after your kids to get what they want. If you're in their way, they're going to tear you down. That's what Emily Murphy is facing, and we saw the same thing recently in the state of Michigan with two Republican elected officials at the county level who are sitting there and saying, look, we've got a lot of discrepancies. We want to look into those. So to break down start of the where we stand on things, in the state of Michigan tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., the state legislature is going to be opening up a hearing on those discrepancies, not only in Wayne County, but predominantly the Wayne County discrepancies. Now, of course, the Democrats, Ned Stabler and others, were saying, oh, well, that must be because of race, right? That must be because of race. No, it's because that's the county that had the most discrepancies. That's what people are looking into. Discrepancies has nothing to do with who. They're not even looking at breakdowns of who voted what. Of course, that's not recorded anywhere in the United States, how you voted, right? That's all that immigration or that information, that's demographic information. It's separate. So nobody's talking about that. They're talking about discrepancies in the over-under. They're talking about discrepancies on the machines, discrepancies in the count, how many people voted, how many ballots were requested, those type of serious, deep in the weeds, Richard Barris type discrepancies, all right? Now, moving over to Pennsylvania,
Hang on a second. Slow down. I want to go back to Michigan for a second. 9 a.m. Because they've been having hearings. The hearings tomorrow is going to be about Wayne County, and that includes Detroit. And actually get to the numbers. We do also understand that the Trump campaign is doing a deep set of analytics that is either has it been announced yet that they're going to actually present tomorrow? Is it going to be county officials? Because I do know that they're doing a set of analytics that separately shows and goes through in quite a bit of detail of what these discrepancies are, and actually ties it back to certain ballots that couldn't have possibly gone out because of the timing, either to the dead people or people not registered, etc. So right now, it's been reported who is actually doing this presentation in Michigan.
That's going to be the Michigan State Legislature, Steve. I'm not sure if the Trump campaign is ready to put forward their analytics yet, since this is going to be the legislature and not the court specifically. I do know that, and I'm sure he said it publicly, that Matt Braynard, of course, is working together on affidavits in terms of the small percentage of samples that he's pulling, and the numbers that he's coming out with are very, very shocking in terms of the discrepancies, in terms of these numbers, that if he's able to pull percentages the way he is in only small samples in states like Michigan, states like Pennsylvania, states like Wisconsin, and others that we focused on, that speaks to that systemic, remember that word systemic that we've been using all year, it speaks to a systemic problem in how these mail-in ballots were accounted for.
We're going to have Dave Kallman on right after Posobiec's off at the bottom of the hour. We're going to have Dave Kallman on. He did lose yesterday at the state Supreme Court, but they told him that he should come back. In fact, they said that the reason he lost was that he was asking for injunctive relief on the certification. They say, hey, look, that's passed, but Your arguments in your affidavits, I think 3 of the justices said, this evidence you're bringing forward is shocking. And you've got to come back, and we've got to get to the bottom of this. And so he's actually doing. I think he's actually going to file today. We're going to have him on the show. But people have to understand what went on in Michigan. And this is about what Tucker said. It's not fair. We understand. And I think Tucker, it's great that he's now, not that he ever came off the thing, but he had Epstein one night and then last night to go through it. The point is we have to bring this home. We have an obligation to do this, not just for President Trump and who really won this, not just for this movement, certainly not just for the Republican Party, but for the Republic itself. That's where we have to close on this. Anything else in Michigan that you can get us up to speed on before we go to Pennsylvania and go to Wisconsin?
Well, Steve, the big thing in Michigan also to keep an eye on is the fact that the legislators there are hemming and hawing about this. Is that people were saying at first that the Republicans weren't going to stand tall, but there are Republicans standing tall because they're listening to their constituents. They know their constituents are fed up. And to your point, they understand that if they do not fix these election problems now, it's not going to end with Donald Trump. They're going to be next.
Yeah, this is one thing that's very important for this audience because you are the stroke in this. I think Reuters had or AP had an analysis. I think 67% to 70% of Trump voters strongly believe that this election was stolen. That means over 50 million, north of 50 million voters. The reason that you're seeing people in Michigan respond, in elected officials in Wisconsin, the reason Kemp is now open to this in Georgia, that Ducey is thinking about calling a special session of the legislature in Arizona, all of it gets back to one point. They do not want to feel the wrath of the deplorables. The deplorables know that the finesse, this took place for the finesse. They know the fix is in. They agree with Epstein. They agree with Tucker. But their point is they want to see a resolution of this. This is why from Pennsylvania to Michigan, you're seeing now elected officials get on top of this, and at least they want to have a show trial, right? And look, don't get me wrong. A lot of these guys would love to throw in the towel, like the people around the president the other day, yesterday, saying, "Yeah, you got to let GSA do it." You don't have to let GSA do it. GSA didn't make a move until December 14th on Gore and Bush, and it was fine. Okay, you didn't need to make a move, but hey, you did it for whatever reason. That's fine. But they don't get to choose the president. Only the electors that go to the Electoral College choose the president, and that's what we're fighting for. Jack, we're going to take a commercial break. When we get back, I want to go in detail in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. I know you got a lot to say there. But this thing in Michigan, this is far from over. You have a vertical that's through the courts, both state and federal. You have a vertical that's with the state legislatures, right? And now you still got the certification process, the final certification process in many of these states. Remember, it's all about December 8th, the safe harbor, and then getting to the Electoral College. There's a lot of fight left in this. And what we're looking for is fights that matter, and this matters, right? So we're going to be back in a moment with the one and only Jack Posobiec from One America News here on The War Room. And it is the 24th of November, all day long, year of our Lord 2020. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be back with Posobiec and the team in a moment.
You are over, 'cause we're taking down the CCP. Spread the word over Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we want to, by the way, that's called the mic on. Vish has started his Thanksgiving. I didn't realize that for the Indian Hindu population, Thanksgiving is a very big deal here. Vish has started his vacation 3 days early. You can't blame that on Denver.
Actually, Vish is sleepwalking, so I'm going to give him a little cover, man. This guy's had like 3 hours of sleep for the last 3 weeks.
Vish is a good man. Works hard. The guy's name's Rush Limbaugh. Let's pull the clip. Okay, We're going to go back to Jack Posobiec. One thing, hashtag war and pandemic, and in the live stream, we want to hear your comments. We want to hear your analysis. We want to hear your observations. I understand this is not for everybody, right? It's not for everybody. Sometimes people just say, I can't do this anymore. I got to have more hope. I got to have something to cling on to. And maybe I'm just going to skip over the holiday. I'm going to take now, and I'll come back and see what happens in January. That's fine. I have no problem with that. And in fact, if that's your feeling, just stop and go do something else. But we're here, we know we're an acquired taste. We're not for everybody. We don't try to be for everybody. We're here for the fighters. If you're a fighter, this is your new show. This is your show that gives it to you with both barrels, right? With the bark on. We're not here to make friends. If somebody came to, I say, I got enough friends, I got enough family. I don't need more. Don't need friends. What we want is fighters. And we focus on fights that matter. Yogi Berra said it ain't over to the fat lady singing. It was such a great thing. In fact, I think we'll tee up some of the Wagner. And we'll let you know. The day the fat lady's singing on here, we'll be the first to tell you when it's time to focus on something else. But we are winning. And you can tell this. The Biden thing is totally crabbing sideways. Right now, remember Flournoy, who have been banging on, right, and hammering her for weeks and weeks and weeks? Now they say Jay Johnson may actually be Secretary of Defense. I want to go back to Jack Posobiec. Jack Posobiec is a warrior, not just a naval officer, and speaks fluent Mandarin. Right? People say, he's just a troll. He's so much more than that. One of I think the best young reporters out there on the scene today from One American News, Jack Posobiec. Okay, Jack, you pick them, Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. Pick your poison. Let's go to one of those two.
Well, Steve, we got to start in my beautiful home Commonwealth of Pennsylvania coming back here. So the first thing that people need to start looking at is the media keeps running with these headlines and this narrative that Trump's cases are getting thrown out. They're all getting thrown out. Well, yeah, they're getting thrown out at the local level or at the lowest level, the district level, by Obama judges, but that means you appeal it. That means you go forward. So they're now going back up to the Third Circuit, right? This was the case that involved the curing of the ballots, the naked ballots, those special envelopes that we were talking about. This is the case that Dershowitz said was going to go to the Supreme Court, and it has to deal with equal protection. I know people don't like to bring this case up, especially the lawyers don't like to bring it up, but this was decided in Bush v. Gore. They said that you cannot have counties that go through and hold this election differently. You can't have one standard in Cambria County and another standard in York County, Lancaster County. That's completely separate from Philadelphia and Allegheny County, Montgomery County. These are the places where the election is held, right? So the rules have to be applied evenly. It has to be the same election across all 67 counties of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's what is moving forward. You're also seeing a lot of legislators come up, and just as you said in the last segment, it's because those deplorables are sitting there telling the legislatures, telling the Republicans, hey, we elected you to office. We want you to see our interests move forward, and we don't trust this election. We don't trust Kathy Bookvar. We don't trust Secretary Wolf. We don't trust this Secretary of Health who's telling us that we can't. She shut down alcohol sales for the night before Thanksgiving, right? Only that night, just the night before Thanksgiving in Commonwealth, Pennsylvania. And so people are rightly standing up and saying, we don't support these officials anymore, and we want you to do something about it. That's where the legislator is coming in and saying, look, we want to hold a separate audit aside from Kathy Bookvar's audit.
Yeah, and there's some controversy. I think we got the nonpartisan group that doesn't want to handle it, that's supposed to do it. So it's going to be.
And they're trying to shut that down too.
Remember, that's why the legislatures here, both in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, not so much right now, Arizona, Georgia, they're all going to come and play here. They're not going to be a run and hide. Why are they not going to be a run and hide? It's quite simple. The fighters that listen to this show, the people that get out there and make their voice heard and get all over these guys, say, no way. No way. We've got to get to the bottom of this. Biden's campaign, instead of worrying about getting free rent with the GSA, by the way, it's a crappy building. But besides worrying about the free rent with the GSA, they should be worried about trying to bring America together to get to the bottom of the finesse. if they were to come out and show that the finesse was actually not true and he won fair and square, that would unite the country. You now have 2/3 of Trump voters to 70% don't believe that he's legitimate, right?
It's interesting, isn't it? You don't see much in the way of any statisticians, mathematicians, or any of these TV personalities, nobody from the Biden camp, going through the documents that we're providing, all of these detailed documents, and going, hey, this isn't true because of this line. Hey, this
have you
isn't
seen
true
any
because
of That's
line.
what's so shocking to me, because remember, they're rubbing the nose of the deplorables, and you got to be evidence-based, science-based, data-based. Hey, you guys are Cro-Magnon man. Right? Because you don't do this. We're bringing up the most sophisticated stats ever, and it's so glaring. Like I said, not one Democrat I know, not one progressive Democrat I know in a hedge fund, right? Guys that have to know math for a living, not one doesn't say this thing was not stolen. The math is so in your grill on this.
They won't even challenge the simple things that they could offer an explanation to. When we say that Donald Trump won 189 out of 206 swing counties, the bellwether counties, nobody's even on television making the case that, hey, well, anomalies happen, because they don't want to look stupid when it unravels.
They want to go by and just say nothing happened. That's why there's no heavy hitters. Why is it all retreads? They're saying right now Biden won the election, but Hillary Clinton's won the transition, right? So here's the reason. There's nothing but retreads. There's nothing but globalist, neoliberal, neocon retreads. Where's Bernie Sanders when he got Yellen going to be Secretary of Treasury? Where's Sanders and Elizabeth Warren? Hey, Liz, notice that Pocahontas didn't get Treasury, did you? Sorry. What happened? This is all neoliberalism, right? The movement of capital and bodies and jobs and citizenship doesn't mean anything. This is neoliberal. You got Flournoy, who's a bigger interventionist neocon than Jake Sullivan. You got Jake Sullivan and Flournoy and Tony Blinken. Tony Blinken's a clerk. He's a clerk. At least some of the guys that haven't been foreign policy total experts, at least were heavy-duty lawyers or guys like that they brought in, like William Rogers, guys who were close to the president. This guy's a clerk. Jake Sullivan's a clerk. Flournoy, she's a hitter, but she's also an econ. Now you're gonna have Jay Johnson, because we're blowing these people up every day. And Blinken's dirty as all get out with the hard drive from hell, which go into more detail. Let's go back to Posobiec. Before we leave Pennsylvania, to Raheem's point, you look at the revolver. They've got sophisticated analysis. Montgomery County, what is going on there? Montgomery County, and I don't understand where the people in the Republican Party from these areas, why are they not on TV nonstop saying, hey, this stuff is outrageous? Where is the elected officials? Now, I realize you got some guys in the legislature. Hey, because Trump's putting the spotlight on, but where's the outrage in the local Republican officials in Pennsylvania?
Well, Steve, I'd love to see the Montgomery County Republican Party get up on TV, and I think we can reach out to anybody there. I'd certainly love to have them put it right here on War Room. But remember, folks, Josh Shapiro, this guy who's now the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, his home county is Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. He's the guy who said on Halloween, he said, once the votes are counted, Donald Trump will lose. He said that days before the votes started to be counted in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So how did Josh Shapiro know that? And then specifically, it's his county that comes in with all these discrepancies. I was talking about the analysis that you guys provided from Revolver yesterday. I was digging into this. Look, I'm from Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. I'll tell you something right now. There's no massive libertarian surge. There's no libertarian hinterlands of Montgomery County.
Zero.
It doesn't exist, right?
Zero.
So this idea that Jorgensen is going to be getting some massive swing there.
Hold on. Hang on for a second.
Or Arkansas, but not Montgomery.
Hang on for a second. Not only is he not libertarian, he's not Ron Paul. This guy's, who is Jorgensen? They never heard of this guy. She. No, but I'm saying that she. But my point is that nobody knows her.
Yeah.
She's a non-event. She's not even a big name in the libertarian thing. That's a complete.
Look, Ron Paul had support, a lot of young support, a lot of college support.
Yes, absolutely.
There was sort of a wing of the Tea Party that was behind Ron Paul. There was a lot of energy. Remember the blimp? They had the blimp at the convention, and different buses and things. It was kind of like a proto-MAGA movement that was going on. But you didn't see anything like that for Jorgensen, and definitely not in Montgomery County. Look. I got my cousins. They were driving around in those truck parades, going past schools, going past where people were doing the fall harvest festivals and stuff like that. It was all Trump. It was all Trump stuff that you saw in Montgomery County. Yeah, there was Biden stuff here and there, sure, in the suburbs and certainly on the main line, but there was no libertarian stuff.
Look, this is how they knew the fix was in. They didn't want Biden around to do. The reason he didn't campaign, he didn't need to campaign. They knew the fix was in. They didn't want him around to screw up anything. Just stay in the basement, have the mashed peas or the peaches that Jill's going to feed you, put the bib on, and just stay out of sight. It's actually quite brilliant. I tip my hat to him. If you're going to steal it, hey, do it. But it's so in our face. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to move our next guest. We got to keep it Posobiec because I got to get to Wisconsin. You're on top of things here. But Pennsylvania, here's the thing. It's not about the future. It's about now. If this is allowed to stand in Pennsylvania, not only will you not win Pennsylvania again, you don't deserve to win Pennsylvania again. That's the key point. We're going to come back in a moment and maybe get Jack Maxey's perspective, a Pennsylvanian, when we return on War Room.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. We got Jack Posobiec from One American News. We're going to be joined in a moment from Dave Kallman from the Great Lakes Justice Center about his lawsuit in Michigan. I want to go back to Posobiec. We got breaking news, Jack, about the Lou Dobbs video. What did Jack Dorsey helped us out on that?
Oh, yeah, the Lou Dobbs video that we showed yesterday, Twitter has now announced that it is false news or disputed news.
14 years ago, Lou Dobbs nails smart tech and the whole scam, the part of the finesse on that Sidney Powell's going down the path of. That's her vertical. 14 years ago at CNN. He wasn't at Fox, at CNN. Got CNN's logo on it. He blows them right up with the details. Of course, now it's fake news, according to Jack Dorsey. Okay, let's go back to Posobiec. Jack, we just finished with, now Pennsylvania. This is what I'm telling people. In Michigan and Pennsylvania, you got to fight. If you don't fight, if you roll over, you don't deserve to be elected again. What's the pitch you're going to make in a couple of years? Oh, we're fighting. No, you're not fighters. When it came the time to fight, it came the time to have resolve, you said, no, it's too hard. They're saying bad things about me. They're saying I'm trying to suppress vote. You're not trying to suppress vote. Every legitimate, certifiable chain of custody vote in this nation, regardless of where it came from, must be counted. Must be counted. Must be counted. Every non-chain of custody, non-certifiable, illegal ballot cannot be counted. It's just simple. It's black or white. It's one or the other. Every vote certifiable in chain of custody in Detroit and Wayne County must be counted. They're American citizens, and quite frankly, the gospel of economic nationalism is deep now into the African-American community and the Hispanic community. This is the great realignment. This is the great awakening. We're certainly not going to suppress their vote, even if this time they voted for Biden. That's fine. That's okay. The gospel of economic nationalism is just getting out there. We understand that. Let's go back to Posobiec. In Wisconsin, and I'm hearing from Wisconsin multiple times a day, the Iron Brigade of the Wisconsin folks. In fact, Vish, let's pull that and play that video from yesterday. The people wrapped around the building. See if Denver can pull that. These people are. It's like the Iron Brigade in the Civil War. They're not backing up an inch. They're being Wisconsin nice, but they're not giving up here. They're contesting every ballot to make sure that it's certifiable and it's got chain of custody.
Let's remember, we've got Thanksgiving coming up, and for me growing up, Thanksgiving was that time where all those elder people in your family got together, talked about their past. In my family, it was a lot of talk about World War II, a lot of talk about fighting communism, a lot of talk about sacrifice in this country. And we all got to face our children in a couple days, and are you going to go in there as a coward? Or are you going to go in there and show them what it means to stand
Amen.
tall? And all of us, too. Someday we're going to
Amen.
meet our kin in the dirt. You want to face them as a coward, or you want to face them as somebody
Amen.
who stood up for this country, this Constitution, and our rights as Americans?
We're going to do a special on Thanksgiving here on One America of 2 hours, 10 to noon. The War Room will be on, and we're going to talk about the pilgrims. We're going to talk about people that put it on their shoulder against not long odds, impossible odds. I don't want to hear you whining. Look, if it's too much for you, punch out. Go do something else. That's fine. It's a free country. But if you're down for the fight, we want you down for the fight. Let's go to Wisconsin, Jack. Tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. And even before we get to Wisconsin, I'll just throw this out there about the state of Georgia and the state of play down there is that everybody's saying, well, wait, kind of piggybacking off what you're saying, they say, how are we supposed to move forward on the runoff when we're still dealing with the general, we're dealing with the election? I say, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You've got to fight for every ballot in both elections. The runoff is a continuation of November. That's how Georgia law works. You've got to work within the confines of the system. We're the side that says follow the law, follow the rules. We're not making it up as we go along.
But Mitch McConnell and Doug Collins gave the wrong thing the other day about the 600,000. Oh, well, we'll show it. No. The establishment Republicans, you want those 2 Senate seats, you've got to understand something. You better have the back of the deplorables. People are just not going to show up. I can see it all day long. If they get down in the dumps and say, hey, nobody stood up for us, they're not coming out. Don't think they're magically going to show up. That's not going to happen. This is going to be a fight. I don't care what you think about Stacey Abrams. She's smart and she's tough and she gets things done. Look at Georgia, right? They got this voter registration thing, and also they got these ballots that came from everywhere. But she knows what she's doing. She signed. She got 600,000 already signed up or signing up for in January. Don't think that's going to be easy. And the establishment's got to understand you must have people's backs, or they're just not going to show up. And I agree with you 1,000% on Georgia, Wisconsin. That's people don't speak a lot about Wisconsin, but that's the highest probability I think right now of flipping it.
Now, people need to remember that in Wisconsin, your delta, right? The margin of victory for Joe Biden was only 20,000. This is a very slim margin. All right, this is definitely going to go to court. The Trump campaign, specifically in both Madison and Milwaukee, that's Dane County, Milwaukee County. We got the video.
Let's just play it without the sound. Yeah, you go ahead and talk about it. They're showing.
Let's play it. Okay.
This is people that showed up Sunday morning.
They've got, and I've got a couple of guys that are actually there day in, day out. They're in as ballot observers. There are 8 tables of ballots now, Steve, in the county of Milwaukee where they're fighting back. And you should hear the county officials are crying to the media. They're saying, we might be delayed. We might take too long. Why? The Trump observers keep challenging everything. They're challenging when the addresses doesn't match. They're challenging when the ink doesn't match because the clerk filled out the ballot illegally. They're challenging when the signatures don't. Challenging everything. They say, yeah, that's called an audit. All right? It's called auditing the vote that you didn't want to do in the county of Milwaukee. But Bob Spindell showed us how it was done. He said, we're going to fight back. We're going to throw the rules in your face. We're going to thumb tap on that rule book and say, we are going to go through these ballots. We're going to go line by line, and everything that you did wrong is going to go on this table. There's 8 tables now of those ballots that the Trump campaign plans to challenge in court. Even, in fact, the Trump lawyer, I forget his name off the top of my head, but the Trump lawyer is even saying, look, you did these in-person early votes wrong. Everybody who did them did wrong. And then the defense lawyer said, well, wait a minute, you and your wife filled out those too. He said, you know what then? I guess my vote doesn't count because the process was wrong. Yep. And that's what we're fighting here. We're fighting for there to be a legal process, period.
And the press is making a big deal about that. Hey, he's the first to admit they told him to do it. It is illegal. All those ballots, they throw those out. If they throw all of those out, Wisconsin is Trump's. And that doesn't even talk about the stay-ins where they had normally it's 24,000, they had like 230,000. Wisconsin stinks to high heaven, but you got fighters in Wisconsin.
You can't make up the rules as you go along. You can't do that.
This is why Jack Posobiec had 1 million people watching on his live stream the night of that commission meeting. Okay, Jack, before you go, any last words of wisdom for our audience of fighters of what they should be focused on?
Folks, focus on the fact that we are the side that stands up for the rule of law. We stood up for the rule of law all throughout this summer. We stood up for the rule of law all throughout the election. We're standing up for the rule of law now.
Jack,
we are on the side of the republic. That's what this is about.
On the side of the angels. Jack Posobiec, what's your Twitter handle? And do you have a Parler? I guess you're so big on Twitter. You're too big for Parler, right?
I'm on both. No, I've got a ton of people. I love Parler, ton of activity there, so much going on. I mean, Parler just gets bigger and bigger. It's exponential growth. It's like Bitcoin. So I'm at Jack Posobiec on both. JackPosobiec.
Jack Posobiec. By the way, everybody laughed at me about Bitcoin, about cryptocurrencies. Okay,
I didn't.
Let's. So he went long.
Nobody ever gets poor by listening to Steve Bannon.
Okay, let's. Jack Posobiec, you're fantastic. We're going to come back to you over the next couple of days. Be well. Okay, I want to go.
Guys.
I want to go now to another hero, Dave Kallman, out in Michigan. Yesterday you got rejected at the Supreme Court of Michigan, but it was an open invitation to come back. Dave, walk us through what happened yesterday. Why did they turn you down, and what are you doing today to get back into court?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Good to be back with you. The Supreme Court yesterday was a pretty narrow decision because remember, this was on our request for a preliminary injunction to stop the certification of the election results. And what happened in Michigan yesterday, as you probably saw in the news, our state board of canvassers certified the results of the election. So therefore, the Supreme Court said, well, your request for an injunction to stop that is now moot because the state board has ruled. But then a number of the justices in concurring opinions and in one dissent actually came out very strongly that the issues we've raised are still relevant, need to be addressed immediately, encouraged us to go back to the trial court, ask for emergency expedited hearings on the issue of the audit. And the justices made it clear that the audit was not precluded by the certification yesterday. So that's a huge ruling right there that's going our way. And furthermore, Justices Zara and Markman made it clear that they thought the evidence we put forward was very compelling and it was very troubling to them. And Justice Zara made quite a comment in going through the different allegations we were making of the fraud and the problems with the poll challengers not being allowed to do their legal duty and observe the process.
Dave, stop.
So it was very good.
Stop for a second. You just said something. In the Supreme Court of Michigan yesterday, in front of the justices on the Supreme Court, Dave Kallman brings evidence. Evidence with affidavits, eyewitness brings evidence. And what do these justices say? This evidence is very telling. In fact, you asked for a narrowcast thing. You're overcome by events there, but you must bring it back. Why? We have to review this evidence again. This evidence is compelling. Particularly, Dave, and we'd love to keep you over for the next segment too, but I want to get into what was the evidence that you think they found very compelling?
Well, remember we had affidavits from Zach Larson, who's a former Michigan Assistant Attorney General, that he observed ballots not being properly assigned to the correct voters and that they were not matching up on the ballots. We also had people who saw that the count and the duplication of ballots was not being done correctly, that new ballots were being brought in. And Justice Zara lays all this out in his opinion. He says he found all of this to be very troubling. And also he emphasized our former Secretary of State, Ruth Johnson, who did an affidavit and said this needs to be checked into immediately and we need a full audit of this. And Justice Zara felt that was very compelling evidence. And so it's very clear that, this claim that this is all illusory and there's really no substance here. Well, we have a number of justices on our Supreme Court that beg to differ and agreed that we brought forward some pretty compelling evidence. And we will be going back immediately to the trial court as directed by the Supreme Court to ask for an emergency hearing and have the issue of the audit, which is really the main thrust of what we want. We want a results audit
Dave,
of the Wayne County election.
Dave, hang on for 1 second. If you just stay over, we got to bring you back. Not one Reuters, Associated Press, not one, and I'm not talking the left-wing MSNBC and CNN. The so-called straight news reporters, not one, talked about what this justices in the Supreme Court said about evidence. You hear Trump has no evidence. There's no evidence here. Even the great Rush Limbaugh, no evidence. And one of the reasons it's not being pushed out, we're going to rub people's noses in the evidence, in the details. You know why? we have the receipts. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return with Dave Kallman about the evidence in Michigan in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back to War Room. We're going to go to Dave Kallman in Michigan. This evidence, and let's go. I want to go back to Wayne County because there's some, discrepancy. Rudy may say there's an overvote, and maybe more votes, and the president tweeted out. But I want to get down to the bottom line here. You got to audit, and these justices in the Supreme Court in Michigan agree with you, Dave Kallman, that you've got to audit Wayne County. You got to get to the bottom of what happened there. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct. Let me just read this briefly here, right from the Justice Zara's opinion. He says, we're not precluded from seeking a future results audit under our Constitution. He said, nothing we rule today diminishes the troubling and serious allegations of fraud and irregularities asserted by the affiants. Plaintiffs' affidavits present evidence to substantiate their allegations, including claims of ballots being counted from voters whose names are not contained in the poll books, instructions being given to disobey election laws and regulations, the questionable appearance of unsecured batches of absentee ballots after the deadline for receiving ballots, discriminatory conduct during the counting and observation processes, and other violations of the law. Well, that's what we've been saying all along, Steve, is we have evidence here, and we've laid it out in our affidavits, and Justice Zara goes on to say the trial court should hold an immediate emergency evidentiary hearing and get into these issues.
When do you anticipate this evidentiary hearing is going to take? I know you're filing, I think today. When do you anticipate this evidentiary hearing will take place?
Well, it's up to the trial judge. I mean, obviously we're going into Thanksgiving, so it's probably not going to happen this week. But we hope early next week we'll get this hearing from Judge Kenny back at Wayne County, and we'll go from there.
Understanding, Thanksgiving's very important in Detroit, particularly since the Lions are part of Thanksgiving tradition. However, the most important election in the history of the country hangs in the balance because if you have, I'm just throwing some math out there. We're going to overturn Wisconsin. That's happening. Michigan is central to this. Do you think that Judge Kenny and others understand that the importance of this maybe requires moving that forward? I mean, did they ever meet on Saturday, or is that just something that doesn't happen when it's called an emergency hearing?
Yeah, it typically doesn't happen, but who knows? In this case, like you say, this is such an unprecedented kind of case. We're going to ask the court to hold this immediate hearing as soon as possible.
So, Dave, how do people get to you? You're going to file today, and if you do that, how do people get to you? How do they get to your website? What's your social media?
Yeah, it's GreatLakesJC.org. GreatLakesJC.org is our website, and we'll be posting every people can see it.
Dave Kallman, thank you very much. Our audience considers you a hero, and you've got a lot of fans here. So just keep grinding, sir.
We are. Thank you, Steve.
That's why I love this country. Get guys like Kallman. They're not going to back down. They're not going to stop. Right? Evidentiary hearing. Let's get the evidence, and hey, let's see what the justices. And people say, well, these courts are all Democrat courts. Well, hey, still a court of law. Let's get in there and show the evidence. Raheem, I do agree with you. I think that we have to become a better amplifier. That's on all of us, right? Dave and these guys are now, guys like Kallman work in relative obscurity. He's a fighter for Second Amendment rights, for the right to life. He supports constitutional fights. Fabulous guy. Everybody says great things about him. He's now on the world stage, right? He's now on the world stage because the media in New York City, Rachel Maddow, these guys, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. They get Rush, and they're correct. Right now, it has not gone to evidentiary hearings. You haven't pushed it. And I'm not faulting Rudy. It's all of our faults. But now we've actually got it, and I think you're absolutely correct. We need to do a better job, and that's on us and others, to amplify what the details are.
Well,
you made some pretty good observations.
We're all guilty of it, right? We think the work will speak for itself, and then it will just sort of self-perpetuate. It requires us to go through the Don Lemons of the world are not going to do our work for us like they do the work for the left, right? They're not going to go through all these documents. They're not going to go through all of our articles and say, wow, this is a really... I mean, we've got some of the best real hard investigative news items of any website in the world up on the National Pulse right now, going through the presumptive Biden transition team, who they are, who they've worked with, their FARA filings, all of this. And sometimes you just forget, actually, then you have to go a step further. You have to package it up for people. You have to make it easy for people. You have to make it the links ubiquitous, have them everywhere. You know, I get a lot of complaints, for instance, from our audience that, hey, Raheem, where's the War Room swag? Because if we're all out there wearing T-shirts and putting bumper stickers up, your audience will 10 times the amount, you know, over the course of a couple of months. And all of those things are true. But I want the audience to realize, number one, we pay very serious and close attention to everything you tell us. And number two, we're a small team and we work as hard as possible, just like Dave and his guys.
What on social media as an amplifier? I know I've talked to a bunch of influencers over the last couple of days. There's been an active effort to basically take the power and the sting away of the influencer community by and walk people through how that works, how Facebook's doing it so that the impressions go down and all of that.
Let me give you one of mine. You know, I have, I think, 280-odd thousand Facebook followers on my page that I've operated for nearly 10 years now. And the day after the election, as we're just posting straight news, they kill my page. I don't have access to it anymore. Now, I have other moderators on that page, and they still have access to it. But it's not just me they're pulling away from the page. What they're now doing is squashing it so that, you know, an average interaction of mine, if I post a link or whatever, would get 50, 60, 70,000 impressions, right, on one thing that I posted to Facebook. I posted something yesterday. I had one of the other moderators post something yesterday. 2,000. They just squash it. The algorithm doesn't serve up your stories, your links in people's feeds to the point where it's just not worth even being on these platforms anymore. You've got to find another way.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return with the more than 20 million downloads on our podcasts, also with all our great distribution partners, from the radio guys, John Fredericks, to the satellite and cable guys and streaming guys in Denver with Real America's Voice, and of course the Newsmax TV on their cable, and particularly on the weekends we see multiple rebroadcasts of the show. And it's just surprising how I get lit up every weekend of people watching some of the old shows. It's pretty amazing. And then, of course, with G News and GTV. Remember, you are the most important audience in the world. And this is one of the most important times, just not in American history, the inflection point of world history, because this is the most important election in China in 5,000 years. All next, War Room.